All right, folks, we are about to walk through the steps for Pause and Practice Excel 2-2. Okay, so we are starting with our file that we just finished in E2-1. And in this file, we're going to start with step number 2, and we're basically going to calculate the median and the mode for a range. So the median is the middle number in the range of cells, and the mode is the number that occurs the most frequently. So let's take a look at that. We're going to click our rates sheet, which we have. I'm going to go to cell D21, and we're going to click our More Functions button, which is up on our Formulas tab. And then we've got more functions here. And we're going to hover over Statistical. And then we're going to go down to find Median. So here is Median. And then you'll see we get this little pop-up dialog box, which you can move around on your screen by just left-clicking your mouse on the top of the dialog box, and you can scoot it around as you need to. And so for our number range here, our argument, it says D5 to D20. Well, we only need D5 to D19 in order to get our median. So when we click OK there, we see our number's 325. That checks out with what we have in our instructions. Next, we're going to click on cell D23, and we could go to the more functions, or our book gives us a bit of a shortcut here. We can type equals MO, oops, O, not P, and we're going to look for the mode.sngl. So when we find that one, we're just going to double click it, and then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take our range of D5 to D19. And remember, to type a range, you type the first cell, a colon, and the second cell. And then we finish up our parentheses, and we can see that we get our result of 245. So now we've done our median, we've done our mode, or our most common number. And next, we're going to move to step number 3, which is using the count function. And so this is a really helpful function to use in really large spreadsheets. And it just basically allows you to count a number of cells where you don't have to manually count them, or you don't have to subtract the row numbers from each other. We're going to be working in cell D22 for this one. And we'll just start our formula, which is equals COU. And we're going to choose the count here. So we're going to double click count in the list. So this just counts the number of cells in a range that contains numbers. So we'll double click that. And just like before, we're going to put our range of D5 to D19. We'll finish our parentheses, and then we'll hit enter. And that just lets us know that we have 15 pieces of information in the cell range that we typed up. Excellent. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to compare results with Auto Calculate. So our instructions, this is going to be step 4, by the way. Our instructions ask us to select cells D5 to D19, and it asks us to right-click near the middle of our status bar to display the options. Now, our status bar is the one way down here at the bottom. So you can see we've got our average, our count, and our sum appearing there. If yours is not appearing, you can do what the instructions say. Right-click, make sure average, count, and sum are showing up, and then click out, and then you can be able to see those. It's literally just a double check for you so that you can check your information. If we wanted to know the average of our range that we've highlighted, if we wanted to know the count, or if we wanted to know the sum of those cells that we've highlighted, we could check that out. All right, next we're going to move on to step number 5, and we're going to count the labels in a range. And to do this, we need to click our rental days sheet. And just remember, labels are is information in cells that's not necessarily used for calculating. So it's generally labels are things like Indiana, Wisconsin, Cass Lake, Lake Geneva, Garden Suite. So these are not numerical pieces of data in these cells. Okay, so in our rental days, we're going to select cell D26. And what we're going to do is we're going to build a formula to count the different properties in different states for us. Letter B on number 5 tells us that we're going to go up to our more functions. We're going to choose statistical. And this time we're going to go down and we're going to get the count A. So this counts the number of cells in a range that are not empty. So we're going to click that and we get a little dialog box, which you can move around if you need to. And our first value our first value box, it has a default range in there. But for us, we're going to change that up. We're going to select cells C12 and C14, C12 to C14. So that's our first value that we're counting. We're counting up the Michigan properties, by the way. And then we're going to click value 2, and that's going to be cell C16, which is another Michigan property. And then we're going to click OK. And what our formula did is it said, hey, you've got 4 Michigan properties in this spreadsheet. Could we physically count them up? Yes, we can count to 4, but in a larger spreadsheet or a more complex spreadsheet, the count A formula would be really helpful for you. Okay, next up, we're going to do the same thing, but for the Illinois properties. So we're going to do our count A again. So we can double click that. And then we're going to go to cell C9, which is our first Illinois property. Then we're going to type a comma. And we're going to type or click on C18. We're going to press enter. Again, could we count to 2? Yes, we could. But this builds a formula for us. And so now we have that. Next, after a quick little pause, we're going to work on our building an if formula. So I'll pause the video for just a minute. That'll give you a chance if you're following along. You can pause here, catch up, and then we'll work on the if formulas next. All right, we're going to pick up on number 6 to work out an if formula, which is a logic formula. And we're going to click on our profit and loss tab. So we're already there. And we're going to select cell B31. And then we're going to click the logical button in our formulas library. So up here in our formula library, you can see we got a logical set. We're going to go down and choose if. And that opens up another dialog box for us. And our first piece of information we need is the logical test. So what are we testing against? We're going to click on cell B30, which is our profit margin percentage. And you can see that jumps into our logical test. Now, what we're testing for is going to be if the profit margin is greater than or equal to 25%. If that is true, we want our output to be goal met. If that is not true, we want our output to be goal unmet. So let's take a moment before I press OK and look at what we've built here. So our logical test is the profit margin cell. If that is greater than or equal to 25%, our value in B31 is going to be goal met. If that is not true, then our output in B31 is going to be goal unmet. So let's click OK, and we can see it says goal met. Next, we're going to just center this according to our instructions. So I'll go to my Home tab, and in the alignment section, I'm just going to click center, and then that's centered for me. Now we're going to move on to step number 7, which is we're going to edit a range and we're going to copy a formula. And so step 7, letter A, says we're going to use our fill pointer to copy the formula that we just built in B31. We're going to copy it over to C31 and D31. Now, we've clearly got an error here, right? Because There's no number in C30, so how do we quite possibly know that the goal is met? No problem. We just need to make a little addition or a little edit. So our instructions are going to walk us through that. Letter B on number 7 says we're going to go to our formulas tab, and under our defined names part of the ribbon, we're going to click Name Manager. And then we're going to click Profit Margin in the list of range names to view its current reference. So you can see we've got profit margin here. I'm just going to double click that, and then it shows me what my reference is. So it says it refers to, in the profit and loss sheet, we've got an absolute reference for B30. Okay, well, B30 is not going to help me in column C, if that makes sense. So I need this reference to be edited or revised. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the refers to box. So I'm going to click in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to select B30 to D30 in the worksheet. So here we go, B30 to D30. And then I'm going to click enter, and we'll click close. And then once we revise those, oh, it should have changed. Let's just take a quick look at this together. Okay, so we're going to go back to, we're just going to relook at our profit margin name manager. So let's click our name manager. We're going to go to profit margin, and oh, look, we've got a little too much information here. That's not a problem. We just need to change our absolute reference in our profit and margins sheet to be B30 to D30, and we can take the rest of this out. So basically, I've just got my formula in there twice. Once I close that, then you can see it changes to goal met. Now, I did that on purpose because lots of times students will have that formula in there 2 times. So let's just take a quick review. When you go to your profit margin, you double click it. You just want to make sure that you have your profit and loss sheet, an absolute reference for B30, and the range is B30 to D30. Okay, perfect. Next, we're going to take a look and build another if formula. So I'll take a quick pause and let you make sure that you've got that goal met and goal unmet if formula correct. So we'll take a quick pause. You can pause here, and then we'll come back to work on step number 8 together. All right, so as you're working on these if formulas, what I would most encourage you is don't freak out. If it messes up, you can start it over. That's not a problem at all. Okay, we're going to go in and we're going to work on number 8 now, which is build and copy an if formula. The good news is you've already done one if formula, so you're just going to do another one. It'll be just a little bit different. So we are on our guest data sheet, and we're going to select cell D4. And then here's a neat thing that Excel does. Under your formulas or function library, up at the top, there's a recently used. So instead of going through and looking at all the formulas, if you know, I just used the if formula, you can go to recently used and click the if formula there. So it's a little bit of a shortcut for you. Now, our logical test box is going to be C4. So what we're going to do in this section is we're going to do a logical test to determine if somebody is a VIP client or not yet. And what we're using to measure that is the number of days they have stayed with us. So our logical test is going to be C4. If that field is greater than 5, then I want my value to be VIP. If that value is not greater than 5, I want my return to be not yet. So let's take a look at what I've got. I'm comparing whatever information is in cell C4. If that is greater than 5, if that is true, I want cell D4 to say VIP. If that is not true, I want cell D4 to say not yet. So when I press OK, I can see, okay, this person has stayed 5 days, which is not greater than 5. And so their return of VIP client is not yet, almost, but not yet. Now, the next step in our instructions, letter J on number 8, gives you a neat shortcut for copying formulas down in your worksheet. It says that I can double click my fill pointer. So remember, your fill pointer is that little black crosshair. I'm just going to double click that and look what happens. It pre-fills or copies everything for me to match the if formula that I just did. Okay, I'm going to pause this again, give you a second to work on that, and then you can hit play when you're done. The next thing we're going to look at is the payment function. So I'll go ahead and pause and we'll be right back. Payment functions are such a useful thing for students. And if you've had business math, you probably will remember all of these terms that go in to build the payment function. If you haven't had business math, don't worry. You can look in your textbook on page E2-135, and all of those payment functions are listed out for you. What we're going to do now is we're going to build a payment function to figure out what's the payment going to be if we buy 10 bicycles or 25 bicycles. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to click into our bicycles sheet, and then we're going to click into cell B7. And this time our function is going to be under financial. So we're going to click the drop down under financial, and we're going to go look for the payment, PMT. And so there's a little pop-up box here that says rate, NPER, PV, FV, and type. That's the one we want. Now, our dialog box pops up, and you want to just make sure that you're putting the right things in the right box. And so sometimes I just like to encourage students, slow down, just think about what it's asking you and make sure you get the information added in correctly. If you mess something up, you can always go back and fix it. So try not to stress yourself out too much on this. Okay, our first piece of information we need in our function arguments is the rate. Well, that's an easy one. It's already in our spreadsheet. So I'm going to click on cell B6, or you could type B6 on your keyboard if you want to. Now, I'm not done yet because that's my rate, but I'm dividing that rate because I have 12 payments. Oops, I put a question mark. Dividing it by 12 because we're making 12 monthly payments. Now, the next piece of information we need is the NPER, and that just means the total number of periods for repayment. So I'm going to click box B5. So that's our first piece, the number of years that we're going to be repaying, but we need to multiply by 12 because there's 12 months in each of those 2 years. Next, we're going to click down to the present value, and that is going to be cell B4. So the present value is that loan amount. My future value is going to be blank for this problem. And then my type, it gives you a little note down here at the bottom of the dialog box. My type for this example is going to be 1. Our book lets us know to put 1 there, but just in case you needed to know this information, your payment at the beginning of a period, you put 1 there. If it's at the end of a period or like the end of a month, you would press a 0 or omit the number there. And that makes a difference in how the payment is calculated because it's taking into account the days and months of interest. Okay, when I click OK here, I get my amount. So it's going to be $209 paid out. That's why there's a negative there. And the next thing our book asks us to do is just copy that cell or copy that formula from cell B7 over to C7. And that amount is $259. So this is a super easy way that you can figure out loan payments, interest rates. You can figure out lots of things for yourself or your business using the payment function. Okay, I'm going to pause again, give you a second to check out that payment formula for yourself, and then we'll be back to talk about the X lookup feature. All right, we're on step number 10 of Excel 2-2, and we're going to be working through an X lookup. Now, I want to make a quick little note to bring to everybody's attention. If you have an older version of Excel that you're working on, you may not have the X lookup feature. XLOOKUP is a newer feature for Microsoft Excel, and it allows some different functionalities and different capabilities for the lookup. You may only have V, like Victor lookup or vertical lookup. If you only have V lookup in your Excel, then for step number 10, there's a formula there right before letter A that you're just going to type into your formula bar. If you have XLOOKUP, you can follow along with me and we'll do the XLOOKUP together. Okay, so I'm going to start on letter A, number 10. It says click the startup sheet and select cell C4. So I'm going to select C4 there. And then what I'm looking for is I need this cost information, but it's referenced in another sheet. It's over on the rates sheet. So I need to use a lookup formula here. That's the purpose of this. So I'm going to go up to the lookup and reference, and I'm going to go down to X lookup, which is here. Now, if you don't see X lookup in your list of lookup and reference, don't worry. You can just click V lookup, type in the formula that is right under number 10 in your instruction sheet, and you'll be good to go. But I'm going to walk us through X lookup here. So we're going to verify that our cursor is in lookup value, and we're going to select cell A4. So the lookup value I'm looking for is this product code. Then I'm going to click in my dialog box, the lookup array. So this is basically just the information that I want to pull in. So I'm going to click my rates sheet. And then on that rates sheet, I'm going to select cells H4 to H14. This is the item codes. Now, you can't see that because my dialog box is in the way. No worries. I'm just going to left click on the top of that box. I'm going to scoot it over a little bit, and then I can see my product codes. So again, I'm going to click cells H4 all the way down to H14. And you can see when I do that, my dialog box shrinks up for just a moment. So I'll give you just a second to kind of locate visually on the screen where my function arguments are to the left there. It just shrinks it up for a minute. When I release my clicker on my mouse, it shows that information for me. Now, I need to make this an absolute reference. So I'm going to press F4 on my keyboard. If you have a laptop, remember you'll need to hit your function and your F4 keys. And then I'm going to be ready to do my return array. And so I'm going to click down into my return array. When I do that, you'll notice it jumps back to my startup sheet. That's okay. Now I'm going to say, okay, go back to my rates sheet to get the information I need. And this time I'm going to click G4 to G14. So now I'm ready to put my cost. I want to return the costs fields into my startup sheet. Once I've done that, I need to make that an absolute reference also. So again, F4 on my keyboard allows that to become an absolute reference. Now I can click on OK down at the bottom of my dialog box here, and you can see it pulled that information for product 001, the cost of $3. It pulled that information over for me. So it's the XLOOKUP is a really neat feature to use in Excel. Now, it tells me that I'm going to copy the formula in cell C4 all the way down to C14. So we know how to do that. I'm just going to get my fill pointer there, left click my mouse, and then drag down, and it pulls all those costs in for me. Now you know how to do an X lookup. So again, for those of you who don't see the X lookup, just know you can use a V lookup, vertical lookup, and you'll type your formula in. Okay, next and last, we're going to insert our today function. So we are going to go down and choose cell A23. So we're still on our same tab there. And we're going to click the date and time button. And so when we look at our function library, we have a button that says date and time. And you'll see that down here toward the bottom, there's a today. Now, when I click today, it puts two parentheses there, but there are no arguments. There's nothing to go in the middle of those two parentheses because this is what's called a volatile reference. So when I click OK, what's going to show up is the date that this computer says it is. So if your computer is up to date and has the correct date, it's going to pull that date information from your computer there. I'm going to press Control Home, and that is it. We have wrapped up Excel 2-2. Make sure you save this, and then we'll be back to finish up with Excel 2-3 in just a moment.